Hey everybody, it's Mike Sullivan with Born to Shine. Today we have an awesome guest and a really nice guy. His name is Tom Burton, and he is the superintendent at Princeton City Schools in Cincinnati, Ohio. Tom, thanks for being with us, man.
Well, thanks. I got a little bit nervous there when you said we're with a really awesome person. I'm like, wait, am I supposed to be here? Like, I wasn't sure if I'm in the right place or whatever. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and definitely, man, you're doing you have a big responsibility helping a lot of kids. So yeah, man, that kind of qualifies you right there as an awesome person. So you're in the right place, and thanks. That's cool that you're so humble. But yeah, so our listeners, they would love to hear two things. Mostly it's your journey. The first question is, what was it like becoming a superintendent? Because that's a big deal. You have, I think, 8 elementary and a middle school and a high school. I mean, it's a good sized district. And then the next question is, did you struggle with anything growing up as a kid? So either one, whichever one you want to start with, maybe what your journey was like.
Sure, sure. Well, it's funny as we were talking, like I showed this
Yeah.
there, and like people are like, man, being a superintendent would be easy. It's like life's a, you know, just like hanging out at the beach the whole time. But that's really not the case. There's quite a bit going on. So you asked, sometimes I feel like this for sure, right? Like in a haze, but by and large, this is how I like to roll. I like to think the world is out there for all of us to take and be part of. And when we impact students each and every day, the reality is that we should really feel like we're among stars, because the kids are the stars. They kind of drive us every day to in Princeton, we have a mission statement: empowering each student for college, career, and life success. So we're among stars, and we feel like we empower students each day. So yeah, big role, certainly much more so in the last couple of years than what anybody thought it was going to be. But one of the things, Mike, we talk so much about here, or talked about here, is like when people are like, I can't wait to get back to what, Mike? What they say? I can't wait to get back to normal, right? So everybody said that, but that in my mind was always a deficit way of thinking, deficit mindset. It was more like, let's get back to better. We get back to better, like we've taken these lessons that we learned during the pandemic, and we use it to advance education. And in fact, I would say that there's been more advancement in education the last 2 years than actually my first 33 years in education,
Mm.
which is it's like a condemning of a whole field when you look at it like that. And that's not the way I intend it to be. But the reality is that, it should not have taken COVID to have us do so many things. It shouldn't have taken COVID to have us like really think innovatively and do things differently. And like, hey, let's, like, everybody should be connected to the internet. And what happens if they're not? Like forever, we were like, oh, if you have internet, awesome, you can do work at home. And if you don't, oh, that's really bad. We're going to keep in these cycles of poverty. And a lot of times. And so, it should not have taken COVID for us to do the right thing.
Yeah. Agreed.
So that's
Agreed.
certainly the superintendency the last couple of years is, it's been interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. No. And it makes a lot of sense because COVID is applying pressure, right, on the whole world, that pressure. And sometimes all of that pressure, I don't know, I guess we need Einstein for or a physicist to explain it to us. But in general, any kind of pressure in life, once it hits that certain point, it's a tipping point, right? And then things have to change. Something has to move. And there was all that pressure on the world. And it's interesting to hear your point of view as a superintendent saying it's a shame that that's what it took for people to start being creative or innovative or really taking a deeper look into what's going on inside these, your students, their emotional health, their mental health, the things that are going to set them up for a successful life. So but either way, we're here, and things are being talked about that weren't talked about. Things are important now that weren't then. So that's good. I think, we're moving in the right direction. So that's great.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things that really kind of drives me each and every day is the fact that we can, should, and need to do more. We just flat out. I mean, I've been saying that for years and years,
Yeah.
years. Like, and it kind of seemed like, when I talked about like it should not have taken COVID, like that's really not a pejorative. That's more of a, hey, listen, let's learn from, let's say, all right, you should not have taken COVID. Here are things that we've done differently because of that. And now let's move forward and take that same mentality where we're not going to be kind of forced to do things. We're going to do things because it's the right thing. Like the sense of urgency that we all felt. Like we have to have that each and every day. It doesn't matter if there's a pandemic or not. Let's make sure that we do what we should be doing, what we know we need to be doing, and what we can do to really impact the lives of kids. And Mike, I know you asked about if I had any struggles as a kid. So anybody who knew me, probably K-12, is probably sitting here laughing, saying there's not enough time in this program to talk about all these issues that Burton had. But I'd be glad to ask or to answer any specific questions.
Yeah, just exactly. Well, like for example, for me in third grade, that's where I started to really feel the pain of anxiety. And that's where things in my life started to change. And so many kids do as well. Second grade, third grade, fourth grade, either anxiety or depression. They're really common. So for you, I don't know if you struggled, what everyone struggles with something. So curious, and our listeners love to hear that. They love to hear, oh, this person is human. They're not Superman or Superwoman. They actually, even Superman, I mean, has kryptonite. So there's no one is flawless. So was there something your K through 12 life that you struggle with, if it was being bullied or struggling with anything? That's, this whole show is all about boosting kids with their self-esteem and their sense of self-love and self-worth, and depression and anxiety destroy that. So we're curious if you are comfortable sharing anything that you went through.
Well, yes, I am, because I think, whether it's your listeners who tune in all the time, or is people watching this for the first time, it's great to expose this wonderful program that you have, Born to Shine. But then also, so here's a story real quick. So in Mrs. Scaduto's second grade class, that was a long, long time ago. I can still remember really having a difficult time pronouncing words, really basic sight words back then. And then third grade, it was so bad, like I would just totally shut down. Now during recess, fine, man, I was talking like crazy, but not when I had to read at all. And the reason why is I had a horrific stuttering problem. Now, the interesting is I've done keynotes all over the country. I speak all over the country. Nobody would ever believe that I had a terrible stuttering problem, but it was bad, terrible. And if it wasn't for my parents, who really worked very hard to get me into some speech therapists that really allowed me to kind of conquer that. And actually, I kind of also believe some of these bullies who would bully me for stuttering actually helped me because I was so angry at them. I knew I couldn't get in trouble at school, although I did. And fighting wasn't right, but I did. The fact of the matter is, all that bullying and all that stuff, and thinking about the fact that, like, this is a problem that not only I have, but so many other people. So intense therapy and all that, and it led me to the fact that I'm on stage, right? Sometimes speaking. In a million years, I never thought that I would have done that. And my reading is, I read a ton. And, I would struggle reading early on because it was always so arduous for me. And so really kind of battled through a lot of that. And then also the biggest thing I think that we all have to kind of get over is ourselves. So whether or not I thought I was the world's best basketball player, which I was not, or whether or not I thought I, could do whatever I wanted to do, like all those things, like we have to take ourselves with a grain of salt more often than not. And we shouldn't lift ourselves too high, because the reality is it's never about the one person, ever. And I know earlier you met Trisha Roddy, our director of communications, and she's one of many people that like lift me each and every day. The work that they do, our administrative team here is absolutely amazing. Our teachers, our staff, they do every single thing they can for students. And so they lift me every day. So I realize like I am like just trying to help some people. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make their lives easier so that they can impact the lives of students. And all while doing that, they lift me.
That's beautiful what you just shared, Tom. I mean, we got to chat the other day before the podcast, and I already thought, man, it's a really, cool guy and nice person. And but now isn't it interesting when someone opens up and is vulnerable, you just feel more connected to them. And it's just part of the human condition as adults or even as kids. So, and I really appreciate what you shared, because I'm sure it's touching our listeners and inspiring them to keep striving through their challenge, whatever it is. If it's stuttering, or if it's being bullied for whatever reason, if it's whatever they're struggling with, that you used the bully and that pain and the anger to really fuel you to break through that, to really improve your stuttering challenge and the challenge with reading. So that's incredible. I think that's really that's a pretty heroic event, and the way you went through it was great. So for me too, I was bullied as a kid, and that was brutal. It's brutal. And the fact, it's just great that, because a lot of kids get bullied for various reasons, whatever it is. And the fact that you used and harnessed that energy and turned it from feeling hurt into anger into fuel to really fuel yourself to overcome it. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. I think very often the bully or the bullied becomes a bullied, right? Like in life. And I see adults behave as bullies,
Yeah,
not
sure.
only to their colleagues, but to students for some reason, or people in a grocery store or whatever. We just need to be kind. That's what we need.
100%.
I have a shirt that says humankind be both. And I saw also on the internet someplace, it was humankind, an oxymoron. And I'm thinking to myself, like,
Wow, that's
you were
sad.
right, got you smiling or whatever. But the reality is, like, if we're just nice, if we're kind, like, we're going to be able to get through whatever problems like are permeating our lives. And it's funny because I talked a little bit about the stars or whatever, and some listeners right now may be saying, "Boy, that's really corny." That's literally, sorry, gang, that's literally the way that I am. Like, I'm corny, I'm okay, but I believe every single thing I say. But one of the biggest things I think, like, if you ask anybody so I'm 50 years old, just kidding, 52. All right, Trisha, I know, 56, just a joke. But yeah, so 56 years old, if you ask me, like, did my dreams come true? That answer is no. I think that's no for just about every single person I know. Like, when you think about as a kid, what you want to be, so often, at least from where I'm from, like, I wanted to be an NBA basketball superstar. Every single day, and I'm from Cleveland originally. So if we had a ton of snow, it didn't matter. I was shoveling off the driveway. I was shooting every single day without fail. I was not good, but what I did every day is I shot. And to this day, being an old dude, if I go and if I warm up, it takes me a lot to get warm now, but if I warm up, I think I can still shoot at a really high level because of what I did. But this is what I learned. Even though I've never played in the NBA and probably never could be considered a great basketball player, the reality is what I learned from failed dreams taught me perseverance. What I learned from like not reaching my dream was the fact that like intentionality matters, routines matter, attitude matters. Because man, I had my shot blocked so many times. I missed so many shots. There are times when I wanted to play on certain teams and couldn't, and other teams I didn't want to, right? But I did. Like, so I felt like I was either not making the team I wanted to make or I was selling myself short. But the reality is my attitude totally determines my altitude. And for the people who knew me in high school to think of me as a superintendent, there's not a chance, because I went to school to play sports. That was it.
Mm.
And if it wasn't for eligibility, I don't know how much effort I would have put in it at all. But my mom and dad really took me by the you know outside, if you will, to the perennial shed, and actually had a come to Jesus meeting with me and said, if you want to go to college, which back then, everyone's pushing college because, now I don't think college has the, I don't think you have to go to college now to be uber successful personally, even though I'm in education. I think it is a route to a pathway, right? But I know kids that graduated high school and they're unbelievably successful, make more money than I make, really happy, big business people. They just don't have a college degree. But the reality is, I wanted to go to college, but I had to pay for it myself. And I thought, how unfair. My sister, who got straight A's, by the way, said, she didn't have to pay for college. Dad paid for it. And where I was from, my parents chose to save money instead of moving out of community. That was pretty tough. And that's a whole nother story. But the reality is, like, that whole upbringing was so formational for us and transformational. It was amazing. But college was something that we were going to do. And when I felt like I had to pay for it, are you kidding me? But my dad said, Tommy, if you get on the dean's list, I will pay every time you get on a dean's list. I couldn't even spell dean's list when I was a kid. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. But I went to community college and lo and behold, went to class, studied, found out that I actually could learn at a pretty high rate, and got on a dean's list. And I thought my dad would be so happy. Like, son, you did it. My dad's like, you could have done this the whole time.
Mm.
What a waste, right? But I don't blame him for saying that, because I did waste. I wasted this wonderful opportunity with great teachers to learn more. But the reality is that after that, it kind of lit me up, and I've, multiple degrees later. I think that all those experiences and the fact learning from failed dreams, that helped elevate me to where I am today.
I love that. Wow, that's super inspiring. I mean, learning from failed dreams, and I think you're right. It's important to fail. It's good to fail. I think we learn so much from that. I've heard professional athletes say that. I've heard professional musicians and actors and people that, would fail and fail. They didn't get the role. They didn't get the role. They didn't get the record deal. They didn't, get on the team, but it made them, like you said, it strengthened their perseverance. So it gave them grit and more resilience, which right now is one of the most important qualities to have, being resilient. And I think it also develops kind of a softness in someone's heart. It combined with the tough grit, it kind of gives it that grace and empathy for others, because if we all did, just for me, it was, to be the next Eddie Van Halen. I had hair down to my waist. It was ridiculous. I had all these, the electric guitar probably drove my parents crazy, cranking the amp to 10 and learning every Eddie Van Halen lick in the book. And just like you, I'd practice every day, just so you'd shovel the snow and shoot your baskets, and I'd turn on the amp and plug in. And it was just every day. And it never happened. But it opened, not to sound cheesy, but it opened another door for my life. And that was supporting kids. And that's a million times more meaningful to me than getting up on stage and playing guitar. I mean, lighting my hair on fire, yay. And you even said something too, Tom, that my dad said a lot. And there's a lot of wisdom behind what you said, that we need to get outside of ourselves. That's where a lot of problems in life, emotional and mental, and even relational problems stem from, is if we're really self-centered. And where I currently live now is in Los Angeles, and there's wonderful people here, but in general, well, it's, I guess, just the industry, the music biz, the TV biz. There's a lot of me, look at me. But what you said was so beautiful, Tom. It's being others centered, right? And that's where the magic really starts to happen, whatever we're pursuing. And so I just appreciate what you said and wanted to echo some of the points you made on failing is important. It helps us persevere and develops resiliency. and just being others centered instead of all about ourselves.
Yeah, and I think like who you choose to surround yourself with is really, really critical. And we talk a lot about the power of dissension at Princeton. And to be honest with you, I think sometimes we're really good, and other times, like when we should be really good, we're just kind of okay, right? Sometimes we fall back on the path of least resistance, which isn't uncommon in many of the schools across the country. Just
Sure.
it is what it is. It's like it's just easier just to go along. Like I'm getting along and I'm going along, and I just feel like if we could have honest conversations, like it helps right us. Like we list sometimes, and we're not trying to like be off balance or whatever. But if we don't have somebody that would just say, "Hey, Tom, Mike, just really kind of didn't hit on all cylinders today," and let me give you a couple examples. Like we need to be open to hear that.
Absolutely.
Because the reality is, I wasn't that long ago, I was doing work in the school, and I was there, and like the principal got up and talked, man, passionate. I mean, it was awesome. I was like, "Ooh, man, they got it going on." And everyone's like, "Yeah." And then I met with the teams individually, and they're like, "No." And I'm like, "What happened? What happened?" And they're like, "Well, we've tried this before. He won't listen. We just feel like it's just easier just to say yes. He'll forget about it sooner than later." And I'm like, man, like if you would let him know that, like there could be this huge revolutionary change in school to be able to not continue to do the same things over and over and over again and getting either really bad results, the same results, which are the bad results, or you get some type of data that is totally useless, and then we're chasing after this bad data to get better, and you can't because we don't have that commitment of the staff, which needs to go. And we talk about compliance versus commitment, and we are too compliant in this country when it comes to education. We're still many times acting as if it's 1890 when the Committee of 10 came out and said this is the way it's supposed to be, and like basically all males, all white, all the same age. And I know they're from a couple different geographical locations, but that's not our world today. So why are we so compliant? Why can't we be committed to the kids that we're serving, committed to the staff, committed to professional development for teachers and staff and the whole educational community? And one of the mottos we have this year is our hashtag. One of them is hashtag our community is our campus. Our campus is our community. It doesn't matter which way you look at it. Like we have to extend our hands more and more out in the community to help learn and grow together so that we understand where we're going and why we're going there.
Yeah, love it. Totally. I completely agree. And you just kind of sparked another question, if that's okay, Tom. Can I throw in? So what are you guys? Because obviously you are a supporter of emotional health and mental health for kids. I mean, it shows in the way you talk and the way you grew up, and that's awesome. So you're definitely doing your district a huge I don't know, you're just doing a great job, just the way you think and focusing on what's really important. So I'm curious, what do you guys currently have, like anything in-house to support your kids with their mental health? Or do you bring in outside programs like ours or others? What do you know, or what's working? Because our listeners, maybe another superintendent like you, or a director of curriculum, or maybe teachers or parents, or maybe there's some students that are curious and, what's working for them? Do you find being successful?
Yeah. So, one of the biggest things I feel, and this is, I'm going to kind of go a couple different directions. I'm gonna go to Oklahoma, but I'm gonna come right back to this podcast.
Okay, cool.
So, like when we think about like meeting the needs of children, of the students we serve, like the number one thing is to make sure we get them on a pathway so that they could be successful. Like I know people would be like, well, what does success mean? It can mean so many different things to so many different people, but it's not money. Like that's not success.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people who are wealthy and absolutely miserable.
Sure.
That's not success.
Right.
And conversely, I know people that seemingly don't have a lot, but man, they're the happiest people on earth. because they're where they are is where they feel they're supposed to be. So I feel like sometimes what we do, we throw our arms around kids as we should. We spend a lot of time with kids addressing social emotional areas, which we do. And that's awesome. And so we do that through personal conversations, relationships, parent teacher conferences, blah, 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 blah. But we find that a lot of the kids, when it comes down to being depressed or having some additional supports that they need, it's really around this thought of success is around the corner for me. I can break this cycle. I don't want to live with mom and dad or uncle or aunt or whatever. And in 35 years, I've seen it every single district I've been at. And the kids don't see a way out.
Mm.
They don't see a way out sometimes because we spend so much time throwing our arms around kids, loving them up, and then we forget the fact that to help kids feel like success is right around the corner, that they can achieve anything, is by making sure that we are spending the time helping them learn and grow. And like, that's a really delicate balance for people. And I talked about this at a conference, and people there were not happy with me about it, because they're like, there's nothing more important than making sure the kids are okay to be able to learn. Like, I totally get that. But what about the other 24 kids that are in class when you're in the hallway talking for 15 minutes with that child? And then that child comes back in, and sometimes they get bullied. We talked about this earlier. We get bullied because they spend so much time with the teacher. Oh, you're a teacher's pet, you're this, you're that. Now, again, it's critical for the help and support. So what do? So we have different ways, we have different systems of support that we have. We have PBIS, we have social emotional learning, we have specific programs that diagnostic evaluations, if you will. So we use Terrace metrics. We've done youth truth surveys to kind of really give us a feel. We have great programs that we allow students to kind of voice their opinion, share their thoughts. Student voice is really important to us. And we, in fact, Tricia, when was our last? It was 2 weeks ago. So it's 2 weeks ago, we had 3 different sessions, elementary, middle, and high school, that allowed open forum for students to talk about how they were feeling, what they were feeling. And it's been really successful for us.
Yeah, that's great.
We take part in C Summit, which we're having our second C Summit coming up here, which are students from across the country talking about equity. They're talking about the way that they feel. They're talking really their student voice. They're expressing themselves. It's incredible. But this Terrace metrics, what this does is there's certain analytics that go into that, and it will flag certain kids as they fill out these surveys. And then we're able to jump on it right away. There's certain tiers which require different things. Some may be a teacher intervention, some may be a counselor, some may be like directly therapist. And since we've instituted that program, Hope Squad in the middle and high school, since we've done that, I believe we saved children's lives.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's so great that you guys are doing that, Tom, and that you guys are getting the conversation going, because that's where everything starts with everything. You know, you're getting the kids to open up, share how they're feeling, what they're going through, just real candid, authentic, real conversations. So then maybe another kid will hear someone else from across the pond or wherever they came in and sharing whatever it is, their story. Maybe it's a body image issue. Maybe it's an eating disorder. Maybe it's something, you know, whatever it is. And now the other kids feel like it's not just me. I'm not the only one struggling. And there's already a comforting feeling in that. So it's, and then you can guide them to whatever support level they need, if it's low, medium, or high. And that's great that you have that system set up, Tom. So way to go, man. All right. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Sure. Well, we have work to do. We're not perfect at all. And, you know, we know that, again, earlier I said, you know, we can, should, know, and need to do more. And that's what we're going to do. We have a loving, caring, very bright staff, teachers, administrators, and I mean, our administrative team is just unreal how hard they work, how smart they work, and how focused they work, making sure that kids are first. And you see it all the time. And I know all the superintendents, they should feel the same way. And they may come here and they may say the same things. And I believe that they believe it. And I believe that they see it, which is great. We need much more than hope that things can get better. Faith that it can get better. But the reason why kids are faithful that their lives are going to change is because we spend the time developing programs and making sure that that whole intellectual capacity component is there all the time. We could stop short and we could feel good when kids cross the graduation stage, and we could look at us, woo, raise the root, we're the best, right? But I challenge everybody right now to say that's not where our job stops. Our job is to get kids in pathways, see them all the way through the pathway. And a great example is a military. Like this, I love this example because we're like, we have, 8 to 15 kids pretty much year over year that go into the military. Some we know about and we've encouraged, and others, the kids do it over the summer and we just find out about it. But I would love to see more kids go to the military. Like when we know that kids, we have a great NJROTC program here, award-winning, they do a great job. The kids that go from there into the military, they're in a pathway like that. They're done, like pathway done. They know what they want to do. They're going to use it as a vehicle for learning later. They're going to use it. They're going to spend, 20, 30, 40 years there and retire. They know that pathway that they're on. Done. Awesome. When kids go into the world of work, it's beholden upon us to make sure that they're going to be in a pathway that will allow them to learn later on the company's dime. Like that's awesome. Whether or not you want stackable credentials or you're going to go to college or technical training. Awesome, right? That's great. Then like they're taken care of. I think sometimes we feel like kids go to college, that's it. Now, Mike, did you ever change your major?
I didn't even pick a major until my junior year. So I would say that falls in the yes. That falls into the yes category. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I started out wildlife management. Yeah, wildlife management. I love nature, but wildlife management.
Like a ranger? You mean like to be a ranger? That's pretty cool.
I'd be all over the place, man. I remember learning about that stuff. It was great. I used to be able to all the leaves and bark and tracking and droppings of all these animals or whatever. But that wasn't me. That wasn't my calling. But the fact of the matter is, like, how much polar opposite can you get? Like wildlife management, I'm just talking to like, I'm trying to be like Mr. Doolittle almost, right? All the way over to being a superintendent. Very, very different.
Right.
But part of that is because perhaps when I was younger, I should have taken more opportunities to learn more about what exists. And thankfully, there's not a lot of kids I know like me as a kid. But the reality is, like right now, we have great avenues for kids. And it's beholden upon us to make sure we provide those opportunities. So when kids go to college, they're going to have a better understanding of what's out there, the college. How can we help them make it more affordable? Because we know the college's tuition's through the roof. Way too big. It's criminal almost. But the reality is when you go to college, it's only as good as if kids are in a pathway, they know that they can be successful. They want to do it and they can be successful. And then I think that's when we can hold our head up to say, hey, these 15, 20, 30, 100 kids wanted to go into engineering, be a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. And guess what? They did, right? That to me, I think it's really beholden upon us. That's what gives people faith that things can and will get better.
Yeah, Tom, that's so great. And it's so true. When you were describing all of that, I was thinking of a TV star, Mr. Rogers, right? We all knew him and loved him when we were kids. This, I mean, a long time ago, but Mr. Rogers was a pretty big deal, right? He would get on and do his show and he was warm and loving. He exuded, I mean, he oozed kindness. That guy was like the kindest man ever. The whole world loved Mr. Rogers. And he was encouraging. He wanted, kids to feel good about themselves. So I thought, this guy's unbelievable. And then I heard someone say, I'll just throw it out there. He said, Mr. Rogers lied. He said, dreams come true. He said, that's not true. Dreams don't come true by themselves. Plans, having a plan, that's what makes a dream come true. So that's kind of what you were saying. I don't think Mr. Rogers lied. So whoever loves Mr. Rogers, I love Mr. Rogers. I love that guy. I love them so much. I wish he was still with us. Greatest man ever. Love him. So I wouldn't necessarily say he lied. I would think if Mr. Rogers were alive today, he would really be pushing SEL skills and zeroing in really on emotional health, mental health, and because kids are really going through all of it. And the fact that you, Tom, are a big believer in paths. That's what you said, right? Having a set path, because dreams are great, but without a path or a plan or a tool, they're just dreams. So I couldn't agree more with what you said. You're providing your kids paths so they can actually make their dreams come true and be the star they were born to be, because you mentioned stars earlier.
Sure. It's interesting. I obviously know Mr. Rogers, right? And certainly, when we were able to turn on the television, every once in a while as a kid, you'd see it. But interesting, I didn't know anything about where he lived. I was visiting a friend of mine in Winter Park, Florida. We went on this boat tour and we stopped by a house, and it was beautiful, exquisite, big. I mean, marvelous. And the person conducting the tour said, "Do you know who lived there?" Mr. Rogers.
No way. Steamboat Springs?
No, this is literally in Winter Park.
Oh, Winter Park. Yeah. Gorgeous.
Winter Park, Florida. Unbelievable. And here's what's interesting. Now, not as a kid, but Mr. Rogers went to Rollins College. Okay. None of which I knew. Went to Rollins College, and they wanted to bring a grand piano down there.
Love it.
They couldn't get it in the dormitory. They said you can't have that in a dormitory.
Oh, right.
Maybe been a baby grand. But his dad bought this mansion for Mr. Rogers. And that's where he lived during his 4 years at Rollins. True story.
Okay.
Unless the guy was lying. I don't think he was.
Sounds amazing.
But what's interesting is when you look at the impact that Mr. Rogers had
right
on the lives of people with seemingly endless amounts of revenue, right? Or whatever. It came from a lot of money. But the reality is, like, he just gave and gave and gave and gave. And that's, to me, like, that's such a driving force to me, that I know there's people that do more, they're better, they have a bigger impact and all that. And that's great. Like, I want other people to push me to do more for kids. But I'm going to leave with this, that, like, life is so unbelievably short. And there's two quotes I talk about seemingly all the time. Although it's been a little bit since I talked about this one from Henry David Thoreau. And it is, "Though I do not believe a plant will spring up where no seed has been, I have great faith in his seed. Convince me there is a seed, and I'm prepared to expect wonders." Each and every day we work with these beautiful seeds. Like, we should expect wonders. The kids we serve are second to none. Like, this is the way we all should feel. Like, we're dealing with a future. We hold their futures in our hands, and what are you going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so let's help them get on one of these paths that we talked about, right? The other one is my mother on her deathbed, literally on her deathbed. The second last thing I heard her say, the last thing I heard her say was, "I love you, Tommy." So I still think about that. But what she said before was simply this. They're like, every day of your life, she goes, you're going to screw up, Tommy, especially you, right? Even on her deathbed, my mom's giving me a hard time. She's like, even you, Tommy, or especially you. But like, when things happen, and we see this all the time in life, like, everything doesn't work out great each and every day. Mm. And she says this: when you wake up the next day, just do me one favor, Tommy. Never let yesterday use up today. We do that way too much in this country. We need to get past it. Stop worried about yesterdays or yesteryears. Let's learn from those experiences, get better, and do more. Let's just do more for people. And if we do that, we're going to live in a world that we all want to live in. A world that's free of bias, that is equitable, that is making sure that we are able to survive and thrive in an environment that, like, we're going to be flexible. We're going to be able to deal with anything. And that's why I say survive. Sometimes it is about that, but it's more about thriving. So, Mike, I sure appreciate this opportunity to share a few thoughts. And I encourage everybody to check out not only this podcast, but specifically what Mike's doing, because he is changing and saving lives every day. So thanks, Mike.
Man, Tom, thank you, brother. And your mom sounds like she was an absolutely wonderful, wise, just really amazing woman. So of the two quotes, they're both great, but your mom's is the best.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Never let yesterday use up today.
Love that. Thank you so much for being with us, Tom.
All right. Thank you, Mike.